Dietrich Zimmermann. I'm the chairman of the Share&Charge Foundation and CEO of a for-profit company, emobility. Share&Charge Foundation is a purely 100% non-profit organization dedicated to the topic of distributed ledger technology and electric vehicle charging. And you may have heard about us because we are around already for quite some time. We started as a spin-off from Energy, one of the market leaders in Europe for e-mobility, 2.5 years ago. And I think we experienced the whole bumpy journey of a blockchain startup over the last 2.5 years. And I quickly want to share a little bit with you. Some of you may know us, some of you won't. So quickly, what's the problem and how do we want to solve that? I will jump into a little bit of technology and also some of the learnings, as I know some of you are quite experienced in this field. And we all know it's all about learnings in the blockchain ecosystem to get towards industry-ready solutions. And then we go into Q&A. E-mobility is growing rapidly, and we know that now the next years we will see exponential growth. And we see probably 200 to 300 million electric vehicles globally in 2030. A whole lot of charge points also because we need to charge all the cars. And one of the major challenges in electric mobility currently is the missing interoperability between car and charge point. On the one hand, on communication side, and on the other on transaction, so meaning payment and also authentication side. And that leads to massive problems. So on the one hand, the end user experience is really bad because if you're driving an electric vehicle, you cannot be sure whether you can access the nearest charge point, and whether you have the right app, the right RFID card, the right mean for accessing and payment. And for all the companies involved, so the so-called mobility service providers, mainly the automotives and the charge point operators, they've got very high process costs because it's very complex currently to settle transactions between the electric vehicle driver, the car, and the charge point. And that is basically, in a nutshell, what we want to solve. And we do that with two products we are currently building, or two solutions. One is the pay solutions, where we enable the payment, and the other one is a connect solution, where we are not solely ourselves, but together with partners, solves the problem of missing interoperability on the communication side. We do that by using blockchain technology and combining that with peer-to-peer communication technology. And obviously, we mainly make use of the smart contract logic of the Ethereum blockchain in order to have all the tariffs and then self-executing contracts between car and charge point. And the standard on the communication side is called OCPI. That's a newly evolving standard on the electric mobility side, which connects the back end of the mobility service providers and with the back end of the charge point operators. So we are not fully decentralized yet, where we really connect cars and charge points directly towards the blockchain, but we make use of this communication protocol to connect the backends on the one hand, and on the other hand, we make use of Ethereum technology for the smart contracts and to transfer tokens after every charging session. We use the Ethereum software stack and the blockchain of the Energy Web Foundation with a proof of authority consensus mechanism, but I'll tell a little bit more on the following slides. We do that, as I said earlier, for quite some time now, and 2.5 years, and we really experience everything really. And we have a very strong partner network where we work with. We just recently did a very large pilot with Volkswagen in UK, but we also work with a lot of other automotives on the one hand, charge point operators, so energy companies on the other, and also tier one suppliers, for example, with Bosch, for example, where we work within the Trusted IoT Alliance to deliver a pilot for charging all over Europe, which will be published in the upcoming weeks. We are envisaging a go live end of this year, so end of 2019. We want to go live again with the first solution. Some of you may know that we already were live like 2 years ago with the AirBnB for charge points, where the idea was that we support people in sharing their private charge points, which was a huge success from a marketing perspective, but not so much from a business case perspective, and also from a technology perspective. It was a real challenge to have a live product out there for end customers, so people could really download their app, and we worked on the public Ethereum blockchain. And all these learnings we really gathered over the last 2.5 years to develop now the product we want to go live with end of this year. And I brought with me a little bit of the learnings of the last years, because I think for some of you that may be quite interesting. And we really made all of these learnings in a very painful way. I mean, we developed these products, we partly put them live, and we just learned also on what does not work. And so the first version of the Airbnb, we used the public Ethereum blockchain on the one hand, but on the other hand, we still had a very central element, which was a Share&Charge backend. So we basically connected all the charge points towards our backend, and we just for the transactions we used the public Ethereum blockchain, and we did not take care of any standards which were also back in those days already given in the mobility domain. And that is also what we see with a lot of other blockchain startups, where everybody was overexcited about blockchain and building proof of concepts, or even like a little bit more mature products, but not very much taking care of what standards were already out there. And I mean, often there is a reason, obviously, why these standards are already out there. And we used a stable coin for payment. So we had an escrow account with a German bank in Hamburg. And basically, all the users could top up their wallet with PayPal and credit cards. We transferred the money towards the escrow account and generated the equivalent amount of tokens accordingly. And then these tokens could be used within the charging network. So people could charge and pay with the tokens. And if you, for example, rented out your charge point, you could also then make use of the tokens again to charge somewhere else. And only at the point when you said, okay, now I want to have back fiat currency, within the app, you could press the button of payout. We deleted the tokens, we burned them, and we transferred you the money from the escrow account. We had a POE data, that's point of interest, so that's all the data for around like the info for the charge points. Also there we had a central database. And the learning was that obviously public chain was not efficient, so our like average transaction costs were $1.20 at those days. So we saw that we need to go for a more efficient network on the one hand. The other learning obviously was that with a central backend, it's not the spirit of a blockchain really, because then you wouldn't necessarily need the public blockchain for transactions if you anyhow need to integrate everybody into one centralized backend, and also the security by design aspect of a distributed system just did not work out. That's why in 2018 we went towards our own proof of authority network. We even started to experiment with light clients in the charge points. We did one pilot with Braunschweig Energy in northern Germany, where we really put a parity light client into a charge point. But also there we learned that full decentralization for the time being is just not efficient. So we had a data volume of 20 gigabytes per month. And currently there is a normal data transfer data volume of 5 megabytes between the charge point and the backend. So that was just not like kind of the solution we could scale towards the industry-ready product. As payment in 2018, we experimented a lot with a bookkeeping concept. So everybody participating in the network issued own tokens with the kind of guarantee that at the end of the month, if you could show that I have a certain token, you will get fiat currency for it. That's quite straightforward from a regulatory perspective, but obviously it's not a direct value transfer because you still need to trust that the other party will pay you at some point. Also, we put all the stationary data into IPFS, so a decentralized registry, in order to decentralize even more. But also there, we learned that obviously everything you do more decentrally also means that it's slower and more inefficient. The same being true for a decentralized app, which we built. And our current solution now, with all these learnings, is we use the Energy Web blockchain. It's also a proof of authority network, but with a big difference is that there are already 100 large corporates and also small startups in this ecosystem, and we are very convinced of this ecosystem approach. We have a message broker to connect now all the parties who want to communicate with each other. That is still centralized, but will be decentralized in the upcoming 12 to 18 months. And we use standards, and basically we use this OCPI as laid out earlier in order to really build upon existing standards, which are much more efficient than our earlier blockchain solutions. On the payment side, we are experimenting heavily with DAI. We integrate them in the current pilot in Switzerland, but we also reactivate the older models, especially the one with the escrow account, as we see that DAI probably for a industry-ready payment solution will be quite challenging. The stationary data is now in the backend of each operator, and via this OCPI communication protocol is pulled out of the backend of each operator, and therewith it's a kind of hybrid solution. And the app is delivered by each mobility service provider. So we are in this world where BMW and Volkswagen and Daimler, they do have their own apps, which so they are the face to the customer. It is just that they integrate our solution or parts of our solution to overcome the problem of interoperability and complex payment. So we are now at a decentral solution. It's not for sure not central. It's for sure not distributed because we are not within the car and the charge point directly. And we also do foresee that in the next years we will stick to the decentralized approach. We may see at some point a logic for more kind of a distributed system even, so to have like real car wallets and to have more intelligence also in the charge points. But in order to for a route to market strategy, we are highly advocating now for a decentralized system. That's a little bit more of how our architecture currently works. So you see that there is this purple circle indicates currently the message broker we are currently using, which is a centralized element, and where we're really now looking into how to decentralize it. So that's kind of the communication layer. And then on the downer here you see our blockchain, which we use, which is the Energy Web chain, where we do the token transfer and the instant settlement at the end of each charging transaction. Perhaps a little bit on our roadmap. So we are going towards a more fully decentralization with a message broker. And we are checking on the different settlement mechanisms. As said earlier, with DAI, we are quite advanced. It's just a question whether it's industry ready already, and also obviously there are challenges around Euro DAI for the time being. We will, within our first solution, for sure have an escrow stablecoin solution, potentially a bookkeeping, but we also invite other partners to participate and perhaps even use individual REC20 tokens for settlement and payment. And we obviously also look into other solutions off-chain in order to also constantly benchmark it against blockchain and how it helps. That's very briefly on what we are doing, where we are and what our experiences are. And I'm very happy to now jump into a discussion with you guys.